Hello everyone, this is 10 for the Chairman. For those of you who haven't watched it before, this is where I take 10 questions from our generous base of subscribers, both Centurions and Imperators. And it's their contributions that they make on a monthly basis help fund a lot of the community content we do, which would include this show, Wingman's Hangar, the Jump Point magazine that we do, which also trickles down to the general community after the subscribers get some time to read it themselves. And actually a bunch of other stuff that we're planning to do in terms of community communication. So thank you to subscribers for enabling all this, and I'm going to I'll answer 10 questions that are posed every week that people want to know the hard answers to from the man on top, which I guess is me. So anyway, and I just thought it'd be kind of fun. This is a book called Space Wreck that David Hobbins, who's one of our incredibly talented concept artists. So he's the guy that has done the Gladiator, and he's also the person that's working on the consolidated Outland Consolidated Mustang, which is our new sort of fighter or starter ship, I guess. Anyway, it's a really cool book. It's actually a fairly old book, but it's got some cool stuff where it's got like huge fold outs of like space wrecks and stuff. So I mean, I think this was the book was done quite a ways away, but anyway, it's nice inspirational stuff. We definitely want these moments in the game where you'll drop down. We've talked about salvaging a wreck in space, or potentially maybe we'll even have like a location on a planet where instead of it being actually a bustling city or town, it could be somewhere where you could drop down into some ruins and maybe discover some stuff. So all those things we want to put in to really make the world feel alive. Not all of it will be right away, but that's all stuff that we're thinking of because we sort of view this as a huge long-term project to flesh out and build this world bigger and bigger as time goes, even after the initial release, to keep everyone super engaged. And also just because we think it would be cool. The system sort of allows a lot because we have both first person and the vehicle side of it, which in the past I've never really had that level of fidelity in all the games I've done before. And so it just opens up a huge world of things we can do. So anyway, Space Wreck, cool book. On to the 10 questions. Okay, here we go. First question comes from Space Duck, who asks, the Drake Herald's position as an information and data encryption ship makes it very interesting. However, is this a niche PvE mission ship, or is it something more? How will the information and data aspects affect PvP in the persistent universe? So, I mean, we're definitely making essentially one of the items of cargo you can carry if you've got an information runner is like encrypted information, and that actually can be pretty valuable in our universe because in our universe, there is no FTL sort of communication. Basically, communication happens at the speed that a ship can sort of travel, or a radio wave can travel in system. So you're sort of limited between the combination of the speed of light when you're in system and then whatever distance you jump when an information drone goes from one jump point to another jump point. So essentially, the way communication would go across the galaxy is I'm on Earth, I go, okay, I want to have a message go to Terra, and I would beam the message to the closest relay station by a jump point outside of Earth, and that relay station would receive the message speed of light, and then it would basically encrypt the data, put it in a drone, and put it through the jump point. On the other side, there would be another relay station that would then get it, basically beam it to the next relay station, next jump point, and it would kind of do that until it got to, say, Terra. And obviously, you need to encrypt your data as you're sending it, or sending it through a jump point so other people can't necessarily see it. And so that's where the Drake Herald comes in, because in some cases you may not want to even be beaming your information because you're afraid someone can actually like encrypt, decrypt it and get the information. So it's like handling delivering a really valuable handwritten note, but in this case it's digital. So you'll definitely like maybe even things like deeds to areas of land, or if someone gets like they're the first person to discover an area, you have to like get the digitally signed document to the Records Bureau on Earth or something, and that would have to get there, and that would be something that an information runner would do. And that's where I would see some of the PvP, some of the organization stuff happens, because I definitely think we'll have some mechanics where, because this is the UEE, there's going to be some bureaucracy. You're going to have some information and data, and that information and data you won't always want to have blasted over the airwaves, so sometimes you'll hire someone to take it. And also, There'll be cases where you'll be in areas where there's no relay stations, right? There's only relay stations in the sort of well-developed part of space, but in the less developed, the frontier worlds, there won't be, and that definitely you'll need a spaceship to take the information. And then something like the Drake Herald, well, that has all the sort of data encrypt banks that will make it much safer when you're sending it. You may want to send an information, say, on a Hornet or something, because it hasn't got the computer systems and the shielding to sort of save it from someone that's a data snooper. So, and I definitely think there'll be definitely some play mechanics for organizations in terms of owning, having title, trade, and all that stuff that will be based on information packets that get sent. And so therefore, I think the PvP as well as the PvE will be something that you can do with the Drake Herald. Okay, next question comes from LYS Clutch, or Lease Clutch. In the fourth 10 for the chairman, you talked about some matchmaking criteria, and I was wondering what the skill level is, since we won't be leveling up. Will it be based on your kill count, like World War I, World War II aces, or perhaps if you're a trader based on the profit you have made? The matchmaking is going to obviously have a lot of criteria, and part of it will be your ping, part of it will be sort of what you're really into, PvE, PvP, and then also part of it will be sort of how good of a fighter you are, or how good your ship is in terms of defense and everything else. So we haven't 100% figured it out, but I mean, I definitely think that your sort of kill count would factor into it, but also there would have to be, like if someone's a trader and they're really good and they've been pretty defensive and they're strong, then they could match up against someone that was sort of a strong sort of pirate or whatever. It sort of depends. But that's part of like we're going to do with the dogfighting. We're just on a base dogfighting level. We're going to do kind of some basic stat tracking, and then we're sort of going to decide kind of what we think the best stats to track in terms of matchmaking people. Because partly the matchmaking also will be based on sort of organizations, allegiances, who your friends, who your enemies are, all that kind of stuff. So it's still a little too early to tell, but I would definitely think that the kill count would factor into it. Okay, so on to the next question, which comes from Gagarin, who asks, can you elaborate on top speed mechanics and how they interact with combat instances? So I'm still working out the top speed mechanics aspect of stuff, because we're going to be limiting speed while you're dogfighting, mainly for sort of the fun side of it, but also there's a sort of pseudoscience aspect where as you sort of make rapid directional changes relative to someone else, right? So it's not speed per se, but it's your relative velocity vector. So if you're going this way, say at 1,000 kilometers per hour, and then you suddenly want to go this way at 1,000 kilometers per hour in a very short period of time, and of course it's all relative to who you're dogfighting or relative to plan or whatever, then that would be a vast amount of basically deceleration and then acceleration to make that change, and over a short period of time it would be a huge amount of forces on your body, and our human body can only withstand so much. So the intelligent flight control system that's in most of the ships will sort of limit the sort of velocities relative to whoever you're fighting with or whatever, based on safe areas, so you're not going to be killing yourself when you want to suddenly go 180 degrees the other way. But there definitely will be cases where you'll be going much faster, i.e. when you're going from one area to another area, sort of whatever you want to call warp speed, which is sort of what we're calling our 0.2 c, so basically a fifth the speed of light. And in that case, you basically would be just accelerating up to that speed and then decelerating over a period of time. And kind of our fiction in our world is one of the reasons why you always drop out of warp whenever you become near other ships or you become near celestial bodies, is because at that level of speed, you actually can't really deviate your like trajectory too much over a short period of time without creating a huge amount of force on your body. And so likely is you won't be able to avoid a collision. So your intelligent flight control, warp system, whatever, is sort of scanning way ahead and goes, oh, look, I've got an object way off in the distance. I better start to decelerate me and drop me out of this warp. And that's sort of the sort of kind of in-fiction reasoning behind why you get pulled out of warp or autopilot, however you want to talk it, when you're going between distances. So in terms of the instancing, I guess you drop in and out based on whether there's a other ships there, and also where there's planets. And then I'm also toying with the idea of, you being able to sort of run away, like you basically just keep accelerating. So you sort of go faster than dogfighting, and your intelligent flight control system lets you do for dogfighting. But the downside as you keep accelerating is obviously the ship will suddenly stop to, will not let you really do much deviation and turning. So if I'm trying to flee a battle and I go fast, yes, I'm going fast, but if someone gets on my tail, it's pretty much a free shot. And generally sort of things like laser bolts or missiles will have higher top speed. Obviously, laser bolt definitely, but missiles even could have a higher level of acceleration and catch up with you faster. So you're sort of opening yourself up to some shots as you flee away, as you start to try and get fast enough away before you can make the jump to warp speed, so to speak. So anyway, I hope that helps out a little bit. But that's kind of how we're thinking. We're still going to be playing with it. So we'll be sort of updating you on how those mechanics will work in the game as we get to them and sort of see it in the persistent universe as well as just the dogfighting stuff. Because the dogfighting stuff's all going to be pretty limited, but this is really sort of more questions involving the persistent universe. Can you flee from the battle? How quickly can you flee? All that kind of stuff. Okay, next question comes from Jamanda, who asks, tractor beams suggest that ships are able to scoop cargo from space into their cargo bays. I assume the reverse would also be possible to jettison cargo into space. How does this work on ships that there are no bulkheads between crew compartments and the cargo holds? Really great question. That's actually something we're digging into right now in the design. So we're actually trying to figure out exactly how we bring cargo in from, like if you're a pirate and you've just gone and spaced someone or they've jettisoned their cargo, how do you bring it into your cargo bay? So one way would be to have tractor beam to help that. The other way that we're talking about is some level of EVA where you would actually get into your spacesuit and take a little sort of space sled out and pick up the cargo and bring it back into your cargo hold. And obviously the ships, most of the ships that are really designed for pulling cargo should have a airlock door between the cargo hold and the sort of pilot or like living quarter area, so that you can space the cargo hold and you don't have to space the living quarters. If you actually had a ship that didn't have that, if you were opening up your cargo hold or spacing or whatever, you would have to basically space the whole ship, and you would have to be in a EVA or a spacesuit or whatever you want to call it to survive that. So obviously something like an Aurora isn't really designed for that, but then its cargo pod is external, so you can eject it. But most of the ships are actually going through and designing and going, okay, well, we probably need an airlock door here. How do we actually physically get the cargo in if we're trying to bring it in space or not in space? Because we recognize that a lot of people will actually be doing that in space besides just picking up stuff on the ground and dropping off on the ground. So there will actually be much more of a, like, in Star Citizen, there'll be more of a game mechanic around collecting your cargo than there has been in, say, Privateer or Freelancer or some other space sim games where you basically just run over the cargo and then it's magically in your hold. You actually have to tractor it in, or you have to go out there and get it and put it in your hold. So I think that will actually be a really cool game mechanic and add to the fun. Okay, so Castor asks, you mentioned in the last 10 for the chairman that the Idris was undergoing some interior changes in order to fit the amount of ships that you wanted inside the hangar. How many ships do you plan on allowing inside the Idris, and which ones? Thank you very much in advance. So we've actually been refactoring the Idris for the needs of Squadron 42, which would basically be a military corvette. So we've done a whole bunch of work on the interiors. So it has an armory, it has a med bay, briefing room. So it's actually going to be pretty cool. We've sort of expanded it more than we were conceiving because of the needs of Squadron 42. So I think the Corvette owners are going to be very happy when they finally get their hands on one, although it's taking a while because it's a big ship and it's the first one we're building the full insides out properly, which we didn't even do on the Bengal carrier when I was first doing the prototype. We did the bridge on that and the landing deck and the exterior, but we didn't do all the interior rooms and corridors. So we're doing that on the Corvette, but the default equipment or the sort of ship loadout or so on the Corvette is going to be, they fly with basically 2 active Hornets, which run the patrols, and then they have a third Hornet that's sort of in reserve in case one of the other Hornets gets damaged. And that's kind of how the military one's set up. So I would say that generally you could assume that you could fit 3 ships Hornet size or smaller aboard the Corvette, and probably fly 2, maybe if you wanted to get pushy, fly 3 off. But really the flight deck's sort of built to sort of retrieve and launch 2 at a time. And then the third one goes into a storage area. So I hope that helps answer on the Idris Corvette. Next question comes from Andy the Cass, who asks, is it possible to do PvP with my friends for fun without losing my ship and equipment all the time? Insurance company will kill me. Smiley face. Like a simulator. Well, yes, it is. I mean, that is exactly what the sort of simulator arena mode is going to be. The dogfighting module that we are going to be releasing a little later on this year is exactly that. I mean, that's essentially, that is the precursor to the final arena mode that will happen in the game, that will allow you and your friends to practice against bots, have competitions in a much more sort of arena respawn model than the full persistent universe, which has real consequences for losing your ship, but also real sort of upsides and benefits. Because if you want to make money in the universe and build an empire or even buy a new ship or whatever, you've got to be flying real missions where you're going to earn real money, because you won't necessarily be able to do that in the arena mode, with the exception of we're going to have sort of a pro sports level of it, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of competition, and that really won't be where most people will be able to earn money. You'll have to do it in the persistent universe. But the simulator / arena mode is where you would practice basically before you go out into the big, scary, wide world of nasty NPCs or nasty other players. Okay, next question comes from Actua73, who asks, will we be seeing an integrated bug report feedback system as we get into more and bigger testing? I definitely think we will be able to. We use Jira for our internal stuff, and ultimately we may have some version of that will be exposed to the public. The only problem you have, if you have 200,000 people playing, you can completely overwhelm the system and overwhelm anyone who's managing that data, because you have to sort of go through and make sure that, is this bug a dupe of another bug? And sometimes too much information is not helpful in that sort of case. So we haven't 100% figured that out, but we definitely, I think long term, will build in definitely sort of some automated logging, send information to us kind of setup. But in the initially, so the dogfight, that won't be in there, but I would see it later on down the line. So I'd stay tuned for more of an answer on that. Next question comes from Sophie Lant, who asks, Sophie Lant, who asks, my question is, how will Star Citizen address such a situation where you have but a stick of bubble gum and a prayer holding your ship together and communications have been shot to pieces? Will we be able to attempt a manual landing, or will we have to put our faith in our escape pods? So that's actually a really interesting and good question. I haven't really considered the case where your ship is shot up so much and your communication module's broken, and then you get to a planet and you want to land, but of course you don't have communications. You can't land. I would think that what we would do in that sort of case is that essentially the planet would recognize that you're really shut up and say you're just cleared to land without you having to request. I think in terms of landing on another ship in space, like a carrier or whatever, a Corvette, in that case you would probably have to do a manual landing versus a automatic landing. And then, of course, if none of that works, of course, you could always use your escape pod. But there certainly will be some handling of the landing, so you can sort of nurse your ship back and try and get it back and then get it repaired, all the rest of the stuff. Okay, so next question comes from Manic. Will the death of a spaceman always be the final destination for our pilots, or will we be able to, say, retire them and perhaps have them populate the universe, maybe as a grizzled old pilot lurking in the backseat of a bar, or the weathered mechanic cobbling ships back together in the seedy side of the spaceport, or the battle-scarred former pirate threatening farm boys and old Jedi and cantinas? Yeah, no, that's a great idea and a great thought. I mean, we were actually just having a design debate earlier today, because we were sort of drilling down on some more of the sort of death mechanics in the persistent universe, and we were sort of mentioning the fact that it would be kind of cool that towards the end of your character's life, you could essentially retire your character rather than just have them sort of die in the field, so to speak. Haven't really figured out what that would mean in terms of them getting retired. Whether they would actually exist as a persistent NPC, or they would maybe just exist in your own worldview, or not at all, but you would just know that they've retired, and I don't know, you would get an email once in a while that say drinking pina coladas on the beach. But this is a great idea. I don't know how easy it would be to work, but I mean, I guess you could always have a couple of NPC slots on a planet, and they're open to be populated by ex-player characters now operating as NPCs, which would be kind of cool because you would just basically take over the name and you would see them there and they'd be just going about their daily lives. So good suggestion. I'll think about that. You never know, it could happen. Okay, so last question comes from Dragonfire Maulus, who asks, several months ago, Chris Roberts made a comment about looking into the possibility of making an official SC gamepad, or HOTAS. Is there any further word on if this is going to happen? Yeah, I mean, we ran a poll on having the, do you want a HOTAS or official, Star Citizen controller? Was there a particular manufacturer you liked? And so that poll was really part of that initiative. So we are sort of moving forward with long-term plans of that. I mean, it won't be anything that will be happening before the dogfighting module, but I think you could sort of see us making some announcements after the dogfighting module. But yeah, long-term, we definitely want to do that. We've been talking to the various peripheral manufacturers, and quite a lot of them are keen to do stuff with us about making some sort of Star Citizen-themed controllers, and also have, a HOTAS that is specifically sort of configured to work really well with Star Citizen. So you have all the, we map all the keys and all the buttons and the joysticks to everything that's happening in the cockpit. It includes sort of being able to have an analog look around, like say on a hat and stuff like that. So we're definitely working on that, and that will be pretty cool. I mean, we enjoy our official Star Citizen gamepads and T-shirts and hoodies, and we definitely want our own official joystick and mouse and all that kind of stuff. So there you are. That's another episode of 10 for the Chairman. Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you very much to the subscribers out there for generously subscribing and enabling us to do a lot of this extra content. And thank you to the backers in general out there for supporting this game, allowing us to make this huge game now at a level that we're competing with. I mean, as far as I can tell, I think we're the biggest PC game in development, period. Maybe, I guess, Elder Scrolls Online that's probably more expensive than us, but there's not many other games that have got the funding, which has all come from you guys, and it's allowing us to make this huge, ambitious game that won't just stop from when the actual game is sort of initially finished. It will go on beyond that, and we'll be adding more and more features, and all your support is helping us sort of ramp some of that stuff up a bit sooner and go a bit wider earlier than we normally can, which is great. But I'm having a great time making a really big, deep universe, and there's a lot of things that we can sort of do that I've always wanted to do now, and that's all because of your support. So thank you very much, and I will see you next week on another episode of 10 for the Chairman.